Dan, with your depth of knowledge of how the world works, but as you just mentioned, and energy, there was a story that came out on this Tuesday that's saying India has about 3 weeks supply of crude oil and oil stocks. How common is it for a lot of countries to have not a fairly limited supply, and they rely on deliveries on a monthly basis to keep those supplies going?
Yeah, the world's economies, especially the big ones, have relied on this idea that you could somehow create a strategic petroleum reserve or have several months of reserves. And this was a classic misread by people in the marketplace who simply think, oh, there's too much oil out there, everything's just fine. They're now realizing just how ridiculous that was. The world is seeing a major draw on oil inventories, and there is no substitute for oil. I don't give a damn if you're building an EV. It still takes oil and coal and other things to refine it, to process it. From everything from your rare mineral to forestry to mining to agriculture, all requires diesel, all requires hydrocarbons. It's how you use it. Of course, it has to be more responsible. Nations that are demonstrating that their reserves are depleting rather quickly signals, the falsehood of the past 10 years, in which we sort of danced around the idea that the world doesn't need it anymore. We can bury it in the ground. We heard that for the past 10 years, and now it's put a number of countries in a very vulnerable position, including Canada. And so I think India has very few choices. Too bad Canada doesn't have an extra couple of pipelines that can continue to send tons of its oil to the rest of the world, done in the highest fashion that's available to the world.
I like the way that Jim and I just
we were like, yeah.
We pause and look at each other like, yeah.
A pipeline, what an idea.
It's, if you keep coming up with these novel ideas, Dan, I'll tell you.
Yeah, the order of Canada's coming my way.
We put in the nomination.
Yeah.
One of the things that maybe, and this is just being an average Canadian and a guy who doesn't have the background in defense or in I've got media background, which makes me qualified to know basically nothing. But it does frighten me a little bit that some of the major customers of Iran are some of our biggest threats: China, Russia,
North Korea.
Are we a little afraid of pissing them off over all of this and shorting them on fuel? That might instigate further negative interaction with these countries, no?
Well, there's no doubt that there are real threats to these countries in terms of their supply, as they used to rely on the Venezuelas and the Iraqs and the Irans and Russias of this world. But this is where Canada can shine. It has an extraordinarily good track record in terms of its democracy, in terms of its labor standards, in terms of its environmental standards. By any measure, we produce the best oil in the world, and yet we still have a coterie of people. And you can pretty much know who they are. Those who voted Liberal, those who voted NDP, voted Green, voted Bloc, who believe that we're skunks. We've done terrible things. We're doing terrible things. We're not the solution of the world unless we basically, choke ourselves. We, as Archie Bunker would have said many, many years ago, we go stifle ourselves. There's people who actually believe that Canada should not be doing any of these things, and that permits and gives power to the wrong people to exercise and wield enormous, impetus when it comes to geopolitical matters. Oil, energy matters. I didn't create affordable energy because I was trying to be cute. It means when you fool around with energy, the basis on which our society thrives, there are a number of outcomes that can't always be calculated, but there is today. Iran has been able to use its energy prowess, as has Russia, to clobber and to push its very draconian, anti-democratic, anti-human agendas. And so people really need to wake up. If not, then maybe the Tragically Hip's song, The 100th Meridian, Gord Downie got it right. A generation so much dumber than its parents came crashing through the window.
Last one for me, Dan. President Trump had indicated to the Pentagon and to the media that he believes this thing will last 4 or 5 weeks minimum, maybe longer. For Canadians worried about the price of the pump, how high could a liter go? 160, 180? What are we looking at?
Well, look, Ontario right now, we started the weekend off 137, going to 143 tomorrow, 144, going to 140, 46, 48, 49, 50, likely by Friday, maybe $1.55 by Sunday. Sky's the limit. 175 in Ontario, near $2 in Quebec, Maritimes 190. BC, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, likely back to 165, 170. Interior BC, 180, and Vancouver, yeah, $2 a liter. So yeah, it all depends on how long this goes, but I don't see a resolution here. And it's the first time, by the way, I think a war has been tried at least by bombing alone. I'm not sure how far that works. Iran is not the Gaza Strip. Yeah, you can pummel that, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of targets, and Iran is not Iraq. It's 3 times stronger, 4 times the population. So I think this is, conservatively speaking, several weeks before we get some kind of resolution. Someone is going to have to yell uncle. I don't think it's the fanatics that are going to do that until every last one of them is contained.
That is something that I think sits at the surface of our fears, that this is not an easily relented regime. No. It's so funny, Dan, you put into perspective something that I'm going to take away from today's discussion, and I hope that I'm right about it. Canada's out there. We do a lot of virtue signaling. We want to get out there and help the world. We seem to know what's best for the world with the environment and, human rights and everything. But the truth is, if you take a look at the center of power and the center of conflict over power in this world, it revolves almost exclusively around energy rights and mineral rights. Canada is so rich, allegedly, in this regard, that if we really wanted to make a positive impact on the world, it could be through our oil. Simply through our oil would put us into a power position to have the kind of clout in these scenarios.
And a position to help countries.
And to actually help countries and have a seat at the table of negotiation.
Yeah.
Until we do that, we're really just out there with air burgers.
Yeah, it's frustrating, Dan.
Well, it's frustrating for you. It's been frustrating for me. I mean, I've had to try to convince people of the wrong of pursuing this idea that we could somehow stop our energy when so many people around the world said, what happened to Canada? A great little country that snapped, lost its way, decided that it was going to, shut down the very things that makes it tick. I mean, look, this is a very prosperous country by other standards. It wasn't always that way. A generation ago, we faced the Great Depression, and before that, some of the most inhospitable conditions in which to live and thrive. But we've done so by harnessing and managing our energy. The fact that we could do it for ourselves or we could do it for the rest of the world, but at the last second decided to go woke and go stupid, really means that we've done no benefit for anyone else in the world, and we certainly harmed ourselves. The next generation knows full well they've been roped. And it's the first time my generation has done something to damage the future prosperity of our children or grandchildren. I personally believe we should be ashamed of what we've done, because it's very bad policy. It's time to admit it, get those damn elbows down, and start dealing with what the world wants, and to restore our integrity internationally, not just our ability to, punch above our weight militarily, which we can't do, but to actually give the world that which it needs, a very strong supply of energy that is virtually limitless, for which the rest of the world can prosper and Canada can continue down this road of better promise for the next generations.
He is Dan McTeague, the gas price wizard. Follow him on social media, affordableenergy.ca and gaswizard.ca. Dan, as always, we appreciate your insight. You are the best of this, and we appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much, my friend.
Mike and Jim, thanks so much for this. Great to be here. Terrific.
Mike, what Dan said it was both informative and depth, but it's sometimes a little scary as a Canadian. And when he starts throwing out numbers, $1.80, $2 a liter, no end in sight, it could be a very tough spring, summer for Canada.
But it's deeper than the price of gas. I mean, what Dan is always about, and I think probably we often are as Canadians, is our pride in our energy. And we have no means to provide that energy to the world. And at a moment like this, it could really be the difference between, helping a whole nation that needs fuel and even offsetting what it costs us as a nation. But we don't have the option. And that's the deeper thing as a Canadian that's disturbing. What's going on in Iran is definitely disturbing.
Yeah.
But what's happening here at home, we have kind of left ourselves with no hands.
Here's the irony of all of this. Prime Minister Carney just capped what he felt was a hugely successful trade mission
Yeah.
to India.
Yeah.
He's in Australia now. Imagine getting on the phone to Indian officials saying, we understand you're going to run out of oil in a few weeks. We're all going to load up some tankers and send some to
Right.
you. But he can't do that.
It's not an option for us, right?